President-elect Joe Biden says he expects to start getting intelligence briefings on a regular basis now that the presidential transition process is officially moving forward. The president-elect also formally introduced several nominees for key posts in his incoming administration. CBS News correspondent Nikole Killion has the latest.
America is back.
Flexing diplomatic muscle, President-elect Joe Biden introduced the 6 socially distanced members of his foreign policy and national security teams.
And they'll tell me what I need to know, not what I want to know.
And Mr. Biden will now be up to speed on intelligence matters, as President Trump finally signed off on sharing the presidential daily brief. The president-elect's national security team includes the first Latino nominee for Homeland Security Secretary, the first woman to lead the intelligence community, and the first climate envoy to have a seat on the National Security Council, former Secretary of State John Kerry, who vowed to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord.
You're right to rejoin Paris on day one, and you're right to recognize that Paris alone is not enough.
The president-elect urged the Senate to give his nominees a swift hearing, but some Republicans are already pushing back. On Twitter, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton described Biden's picks as panda huggers who will only reinforce his instincts to go soft on China, while Florida Senator Marco Rubio criticized their Ivy League backgrounds, chiding they'll be orderly caretakers of America's decline.
I'm pleased to have received the ascertainment from GSA.
A day after the GSA approved a formal transition, Mr. Biden's team is in touch with all federal agencies and Dr. Anthony Fauci.
We're already working out, meeting with the COVID team in the White House and how to not only distribute, but get from a vaccine being distributed to a person able to get vaccinated.
2 more states certified the results of the presidential election on Tuesday. Nevada and Pennsylvania both certified President-elect Joe Biden as the winner. Despite that, President Trump insists he will, quote, never concede. But behind the scenes, his administration is now moving forward with the transition process. CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy has the latest.
President Trump making a sudden and strange appearance in the briefing room today to brag about the stock market.
The stock market's just broken 30,000. Never been broken, that number. That's a sacred number.
Walking out after just 64 seconds, again refusing to take any questions. The stock market is soaring on news that an official transition to President-elect Joe Biden is underway and that he's expected to nominate former Fed Chief Janet Yellen for Treasury Secretary, proving President Trump's pre-election predictions wrong.
If they got in, they would collapse it. You'll have a crash the likes of which you've never seen before.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Nevada have now certified their elections for Biden, and the General Services Administration triggered the transition. But President Trump is still refusing to concede, declaring today the GSA does not determine who the next president of the United States will be. CBS News has learned the president's top lawyers and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows encouraged him to let the transition begin. In a memo, Meadows told White House staff that per transition protocol, they are not permitted to speak directly with Biden's transition team unless authorized. And President Trump today issuing his first pardon since losing the election.
Of a very, very fortunate turkey
named Corn. He noticeably did not repeat what he said about a turkey named Carrots in 2018.
This was a fair election. Unfortunately, Carrots refused to concede and demanded a recount, and we're still fighting with Carrots.
Nikole Killion and Ben Tracy join me now. So, Ben, CBS News has learned that President Trump signed off on sharing his intelligence briefing, known as the Presidential Daily Brief, with President-elect Biden's team. Tell us why that's significant and what does it signal?
Well, this is the highly classified briefing that the president gets every day, either in document form or in person from a briefer from the intelligence community, if the president decides to avail himself of this. This has been a real point of contention during the transition. Initially, President-elect Biden was saying, well, I don't necessarily need it right away because I'm not in a position to make any decisions. But as time has gone on, you've heard bipartisan concern that Biden would not be up to speed on some of the major threats that the U.S. faces on day one if he doesn't get access to this brief. Now, what is significant about this is that President Trump actually has to sign off for this to happen. He did that today. This is a signal that the president realizes that this transition is for real, despite the public bluster about not conceding and continuing to fight the election results.
Well, Nikole, Mr. Biden quickly addressed the daily brief and some of the transition process on Tuesday. What did he say?
Well, Elaine, he said that he hasn't started getting those briefings just yet, but he does expect those to start in short order and that he will be getting those on a regular basis. And as Ben alluded to, it certainly is something that the president-elect has been lacking and something that many on his team have pointed out is crucial for him to be able to be up to speed with regard to national security threats. As you know, he rolled out his national security and foreign policy teams earlier today. And so, again, now with this level of ascertainment, the fact that it has been granted by GSA, certainly those teams also hope to get to work as well as far as being able to liaise with the appropriate agencies.
Well, Nikole, the president-elect formally introduced some of the key members of his national security and foreign policy teams on Tuesday. What are some of the top issues they plan to focus on once in office?
Well, to put it in two words, citing the president-elect, America's back. I mean, that was his message today. That has been his message for some time, and that really was the message that we heard writ large from members of his national security and foreign policy teams, whether it was Tony Blinken, who has been named Secretary of State or nominated for the position of Secretary of State. We also heard from Linda Thomas Greenfield, who's been nominated for the position of Ambassador to the UN, who said, you know, multilateralism is back, diplomacy is back, and then also, of course, from former Secretary of State John Kerry, who will serve in a special presidential climate envoy role. And really, this will be the first time that a position like this has been elevated to the National Security Council. And so we heard him today, too, talk about getting back into the Paris climate agreement, but that it's important to do much more than that. So that just the beginnings of this new team and their hopes for the administration to put America back on the international stage and really, instead of being America first, really focus more on a multilateral approach in terms of diplomacy and getting back into some of these international agreements that President Trump got out of.
And Nikole, we saw in your piece some of the reaction from Capitol Hill. What kind of confirmation battles did these nominees face?
Well, we did hear the president-elect address that when he did this rollout. He said that he wants the Senate to act swiftly on his nominees and to be able to give them a prompt hearing. Obviously, this is something that won't take place until the new administration comes on board in January. And look, the president-elect was asked about this just the other day as to whether or not he anticipated any roadblocks from Republicans, and he jokingly kind of said, well, of course not, but certainly this is something that the transition team is watching. They've already generated and created a team that will work with these nominees to help shepherd them through the process. And again, keep in mind that this will all hinge on the control of power in Congress, most specifically in the Senate. We know there are those two runoff races that are expected in Georgia, which could make a difference should Democrats win those seats. And if they don't, obviously, if they remain in Republican hands, that has implications as well, and could certainly make it a little bit tougher for some of the president-elect's nominees to get through. But overall, certainly the team remains hopeful that they can move their people through as best as possible.
There are also reports, Nikole, that Mr. Biden plans to pick former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen as his Treasury Secretary. What might that tell us about how the president-elect plans to focus his economic agenda, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, as we've seen with this national security and foreign policy rollout, the president-elect really seems to value experience, and that is something that Janet Yellen certainly would bring to the table, having served as a former Federal Reserve Chair and also having served on the Council of Economic Advisors and holding a number of other key roles throughout the economy. But certainly one thing to keep in mind, too, is the historic nature if she is named and if she is confirmed, in the sense that there has never been a woman named to the Treasury position. So that would be significant as well, and certainly would follow a pattern of what we have seen from the president-elect as far as trying to nominate these historic first. But look, the president-elect has been very clear about his economic agenda, that there really can't be any type of recovery without addressing the coronavirus pandemic first. He also has been quite vocal on prodding Congress to try to approve some type of coronavirus relief package. That is something he reaffirmed after meeting with the Democratic leaders, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer just last week. So that certainly remains front and center for the president-elect as he moves forward with his transition.
Meantime, Ben, the Trump campaign announced that state legislatures in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona will hold public hearings on the 2020 election. What's the purpose of those hearings, and could they actually have any impact on the results in those states?
Well, the one thing all those states have in common is they are controlled by Republican legislatures. So this is being driven by Republicans in those states. And the Trump campaign says that what it wants is a full airing of voting irregularities and fraud, even though we always should give the standard caveat that there is no evidence of any widespread fraud or voting irregularities in those states or in any other states. So this appears to be more partisan political theater than it is really anything that's going to change the outcome of the election in those states. And keep in mind that Michigan and Pennsylvania have already certified their election results. So that's a done deal. The cake is baked in those states. And in Arizona, that's about to happen probably within the next 24 hours. And even there in Arizona, the Republican governor today came out and said that Joe Biden won the state of Arizona. So this seems to be something where you should expect some of the folks that the Trump campaign has trotted out in some of these sidewalk press conferences that they've done in recent weeks, saying that they either, signed a ballot twice or somebody else signed their ballot. You'll probably hear from some of those people, but there is no evidence of widespread fraud, which is what the Trump campaign continues to allege.
Yeah, notable that, as you pointed out in your piece, the president appeared before the cameras today in the briefing room for just 64 seconds. No questions taken. All right, Nikole Killion and Ben Tracy, thanks to you both.